Welcome back. We take a look at the story behind the story. We're taking a look specifically this time at the murder of Selena Quintanilla, and we have the authority on that, María Celeste Arraraz, here to share all of the information about the investigation, the day that she found out about the news, and having to share that news across the world. And in addition, of course, her one-on-one sit down with Yolanda Saldívar. How did this interview happen?
Well, it didn't happen from one day to the other,
Right.
That's for sure, because her attorneys, when I first contacted them, when this whole thing started to ask for the interview, they said, not today, not tomorrow, not ever are you going to interview her. Not you nor anybody else is going to interview Yolanda Saldívar. That's not happening. Forget about it. Goodbye. Boom. And they hung up on me.
Okay.
So, that was a kind of a
Cut
big
and
wall,
clear, right.
cut and clear. And then so I started to think hard about all the ways in which I could contact her. So I first tried to do it directly. I sent her a letter, very basic, objective letter saying, listen, a lot has been said about what happened. You haven't spoken to anybody, and I think you have a right to give your version of what happened. And I'm willing to do it in a very respectful manner. And please, if you consider giving it to anybody, give it to me. And then I sent her a photograph of mine signed because I knew I was going to see her in court. So I wanted to make sure that she identified who I was, so that she
Gotcha.
could connect, and maybe that would help.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a carefully thought out move.
Right.
And I'm sure that helped somewhat, because when I first went to court, I could see her pointing me out to her attorney, who I already knew, who was a Hispanic attorney that they had, and who I had contacted after they hung up on the phone on me. So I realized she knew who I was, and that's a good start.
So she visually identified
Yeah.
you.
So
in court.
once you have that connection visually, you know that you have the upper hand over other people that she doesn't have that connection with. Back then, everything was so different. Everybody hated Yolanda. She was the most hated person in the world.
Right.
I could tell you that much. That some journalists started to call her the killer, even though everything pointed to the fact that she was. So that's the ambience in which this interview took place.
How did you go in there unbiased? I mean, it's easy to say, well, no, you're a journalist, you've got to be professional.
Well,
but that's hard.
Because that's the training. That's a training as journalists that we have. And also, when I went in there already, there was not a matter of being biased or not. She had been convicted. So she was the killer. And the questions that I was going to ask were based on facts and evidence that was presented in court,
Right.
and that I had gathered. So the evidence is objective. I was going to ask questions that the state attorney wanted to ask.
Of course.
I was going to become the state attorney in that interview.
But what were you feeling being face to face with her? Face to face with a convicted murderer.
I wasn't. She's not menacing looking, at all. She has a very low, sweet, kind of
Homey look, right?
kind of like I would say like childish voice.
Yes.
And so no, she's not menacing, and she was actually always very nice. I mean, you just don't lose perspective of what she did.
And why you're there.
And while I'm there, yeah, but no, she was. I was nervous that I wanted to ask all the right questions. I was nervous that I didn't want to turn her off, being so aggressive that she would retrieve and leave or
Right.
finish the interview abruptly. I was nervous that I wouldn't be strong enough, and then the public might think that I'm being a softie, or I'm befriending her in a way that it will take away my objectivity. So I was balancing all these things.
Did you at any point feel frustrated? Because in seeing the interview, there were times where she would almost make up things or speak things that weren't true.
Yeah,
Did you feel
there were moments.
frustration?
I think that frustration is too strong of a word, because I wasn't frustrated. I was just like taken aback, like, how can you say that?
Right.
It makes no sense. And also, I realized during the interview that she was in certain ways she was very out of touch with reality, and that she believed her own lies.
Right.
So once I realized that was happening, I asked the questions very thoroughly and very firm, but also in a benign manner, because I realized that there was a few screws missing there.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that when you're seeing the interview. You actually have said in an interview, you said that she's manipulative. Did you realize it at the moment that she was trying to manipulate you, or
No.
was it looking back?
No. I went into my conversations with her. I mean, giving her the benefit of the doubt of a regular, normal conversation.
Right.
she got upset because I said she was manipulative
Correct.
in an interview, and then she didn't want to talk to me anymore. But she was manipulative, and it was through interacting with her that I understood how she probably manipulated Selena, because she would lie when things were not going her way, or when she was afraid of doing something, or she changed her mind about something. She would lie, and just like she told Selena at one
Right.
point that she had been raped, and she said all these things that came out in the trial. She told me at one point that she had breast cancer, which she didn't.
Right.
And I started to realize that she says those things when she wants to divert attention from what's going on for whatever reason. And I was like, why do you have to tell me you have breast cancer? Why? What's the point?
Right.
But she would tend to press buttons to try to get you to do what she wanted to do.
Now, you've compared the Selena murder trial to the O.J. Simpson trial in mainstream media, right?
Yeah.
And in many ways it is. It's the same, I would say.
Because
the
it
same,
got the attention.
Exactly. The same attention-grabbing headline. But it's very different in the sense that in the O.J. Simpson case, you have the celebrity who's the suspect.
Yeah.
And in the Selena case, you have the celebrity
The
who's the victim, right?
Yeah.
So it's two completely different ways of handling that, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, very different. In this case, the accused criminal was a nobody.
Right.
And in the book and in the miniseries, that I wrote, Selena's Secret, you see how she becomes from being a nobody, a person who had been bullied and who was not popular and not very blessed physically speaking, who becomes then the right hand of a superstar, and then finds herself like an identity. And then when she's about to lose that identity, then she snaps, and it unravels a series of events that ended up with taking Selena's life.
Of course.
But yeah, so OJ, everybody knew everything about him. With her, nobody knew anything about her.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, you've said that Yolanda won't grant you another interview because of the fact that you've said that she's manipulative. She did not like that.
Yeah, she told me in a letter, because when it was the 20th anniversary of the murder, I tried to contact her again to do an updated interview to see if she had reflected throughout the years, if she saw what happened differently, if she felt any remorse. I just wanted to pick her brain and see how this had changed, this story that fascinated me from day one. And she said, absolutely not interview to you. She was very upset. She said, how dare you call me manipulative? You only saw me one time in your life. And she's right. I only saw her one time in our lives. But we spoke many times on the phone. We corresponded. And it is during those correspondence and many times we agreed on things, and then she went back on things that had to do with interviews and interviewing people that were close to her. She would just change her plans and then lie about why everything got canceled and just things like that.
Now, you said that you wanted to make sure you went into that interview as unbiased and professional as you could, and that you obviously wanted to make sure that the audience also wouldn't see you as a softie. How did the audience respond to you? Were they okay with how you handled the interview?
I think so. Yeah, they were very, very, very pleased with the product and with the way that it was conducted. So much so that the father, Selena's father, who was opposed to me interviewing Yolanda, called me afterwards and requested that I interview him because he wanted to address certain things that Yolanda said. And the first thing that he said was, you know what, I was against you interviewing this woman, this crazy woman, and now I think that you did a good job, and I want to respond to certain things that she said.
You see? So you did your job.
Yeah, it was good. And in that interview, he said a lot of things that were important, in my opinion, about things that they discover and a pattern that they saw on Yolanda's behavior previous to the murder.
Right. If Selena were still alive today, where do you think she would be?
That is such a hard question because talented she was, very talented. And the album that was a crossover album, Dreaming of You, that came right after she was killed, was fantastic. But I don't know if there would have been as much of an audience listening to that album that was so fantastic. That remains to...
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Now, Yolanda Saldívar is up for parole.
She's not going to give me an interview, that I tell you.
What do you think the outcome will be for the eligibility for parole?
I don't know.
2025 is less than 6 years away, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the outcome will be. She's had good behavior, and that is a plus for her. But if she comes out, she's going to have to change her identity because she is in a lot of danger if she comes out under her name and her own identity. I think that's something that the authorities are going to take into consideration.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't know if the public would be able to handle that. Just her being out on the streets.
There's always a mad person that is going to want to take revenge after all these years, even
Right.
though at that point she would have had, she would have done her thing to comply with justice. You know.
So, María Celeste, anything else that you want to add to this?
I think the day that this happened, that 31st of March of 1995, we lost a star, but a legend was born.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for granting us this chat here on Hollywood Files. I hope you had a good time.
I did.
I think I could sit here and talk to you
Me
forever
too.
and ever and
Me
ever.
too. This is such a fascinating case, and it's something that we take very seriously. Even though looking back at it, we can do it at certain points with a smile, but it's very serious and big tragedy what happened.
Yeah, and we are fortunate enough that we have, like you said, her legacy, her music that will live on forever.
Yes.
Thank you so much, María Celeste.
Thank you.
Amigos de YouTube, ya saben, nos conocen bien, somos Latinx Now. Y bueno, si quieren seguir viendo este contenido es fácil.
Suscríbanse.
¡Lo dijo bien! ¡Lo dijo bien! Y ahora sí, suscríbanse, por favor.
Siempre dices que suscríbase.
Suscríbase.
Wait, and turn on post notifications. You can do that now.
También, eso es importante.
Turn on notifications. Y suscríbanse.
I said it again.